So there's this gap between what parents are espousing and what kids are absorbing. And so a lot of our work is in this gap. How do we get parents to sort of walk the talk? If we develop our kids' capacity to tune into and empathize with other people, they're going to have better relationships their whole lives. They're going to be better parents. They're going to be better friends, mentors, romantic partners. That's not a relationship.
Yeah.
And AI may come to see and know you, but the beauty is in the mutuality, right? Often it's in the being known. It's in the being able to know and see, not just being able to be known and seen, and to be in a relationship of mutual care. I think they're messages of hope that are very important for us. I think we have a moral responsibility to convey hope to younger generations. I think the real art of parenting often is understanding the ways your child is different from you and getting behind the ways your child is different.
My guest today is Richard Weissbourd, who's a senior lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the Kennedy School of Government. Richard's work ranges from various different aspects on understanding moral development of children, resilience building. How do we ensure that schools are supporting ethical children? All of this gets covered in the span of this conversation with Richard. It's an extremely insightful one because it's one that I feel a lot of parents often struggle with. They wonder how best can they raise their kids to be good human beings. And that's exactly what Richard's work includes. Stay tuned for the course of this podcast. It's an amazing one, and I'm so excited for it. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Dr. Richard. It's really an honor to have you.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
And just as a little fun fact, my husband was actually here last semester. He was auditing classes and he really wanted to audit yours, but he couldn't because of like a clash and something. So he was like, no, you have to email Dr. Richard.
Well, I think I'll teach it next year. Will you be around next year?
No, unfortunately, I graduate very soon. But all of your work, which is primarily in the space of childhood resilience, moral development, is something which has really intrigued me as I was kind of reading up a little bit about it. What got you fascinated into this space? What got you here in the first place?
You know, this has very old roots. And I grew up in a family where my father was actually a real estate developer, but he became very interested in moral development. And so from a young age, he used to give me moral dilemmas. And,
oh, wow.
And rather than going to temple, I'm Jewish, he would give me parables, dilemmas from Jewish history that we would talk about. There were ethical dilemmas. And my mother, both of them were activists, and there was a real identity in my family that you had to contribute and give to your community. So it's sort of in my blood. It's deep in my blood. About 20 years ago, I became very concerned, though, by the parenting culture in the U.S. and the degree to which in many communities, particularly middle and upper class communities, we were hyper-focused on our kids' well-being and achievement and had sidelined caring for other people, caring for the common good. So a lot of what motivated Making Caring Common, this initiative that I direct, is how do we put caring for others, caring for the common good front and center again in child raising.
That's such an important conversation to have. And I think what you said, like parenting just in the US, I don't think it's limited just there because I work with parents back home in India. And it's similar, right? Because I think the need to prove your child's achievements is so much more than the need to prove that your child is actually a good human being.
Yeah.
And I think it's that like societal norm almost, which has been developed over many, many years of conditioning. Could you speak a little bit more towards that effect? Like, what have you really seen when it comes to parenting cultures, how they've shifted, and what has caught your attention in that?
Well, I think there are two things. There are a few things that change. And you know, by the way, when you ask parents, what do they prioritize in child raising? They say caring. But when you ask kids, what do their parents prioritize? They say achievement and happiness. They rank caring pretty low. So there's this gap between what parents are espousing and what kids are absorbing. And so a lot of our work is in this gap. How do we get parents to sort of walk the talk? Walk the talk?
Yeah.
Walk the talk about this. So I think a few things happened. I think, you know, in many communities, the competition for college became fierce.
Yeah.
Went through a period of financial distress where people were very worried about themselves financially and self-protective. And that can fuel individualism. I need to focus on my own advancement. I think the self-esteem movement was part of this. that we became very focused on how the self is doing all the time. And the wellness industry and the psychotherapy industry got us very focused on the self. And there's some very good things about the psychotherapy and wellness industry, but I do think it's caused us to make our own feelings, in many cases, to make our own feelings too precious and to be too occupied with our own feelings.
Right.
So I think that was part of this trend as well. And these things can become epidemic in the sense that if you're a parent and your neighbor's getting their kid an SAT tutor, in 9th or 10th grade, you feel like you're cheating your kid not to get an SAT tutor in 9th grade. And then another parent gets the SAT tutor in 8th grade, and everybody just keeps ramping each other up. So, once these things start, they can start to spiral out of control.
Absolutely. And in your work and in your interaction with parents, what are the few things which you feel as though have helped them bridge this gap? Like what you mentioned, that there's a gap between what parents think they do versus what kids think parents do. What helps them bridge this gap?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is for parents is go home and ask your kids, what do you think is most important to me? Do you think it's most important to me that you're achieving at a high level, or that you're happy, or that you're caring? We also asked a question, we got different answers to this, but we asked kids whether they thought their parents would be prouder of them if they got good grades or if they were good people. And in one of our surveys, kids were twice as likely to say my parents would be prouder if I got good grades. In a more recent survey, it was a little different sample, it was more split 50-50. But that's another question that parents could ask their kids. Do you think that I'll be prouder if you get good grades or if I'm a good person? And it's a great conversation to have, because I think most kids from our data are going to say, I think you're going to be proud of me if I achieve at a high level. And that's an opportunity for a parent to say, well, it's not really what I think. So we got to keep talking about this. And you got to hold me accountable, because if I'm sending you that message, that's not the message I want to be sending to you. So I think that's one thing that parents can do. But it also is getting having high ethical expectations of your kids. They're going to be respectful to people. They're going to be respectful to the bus driver, the server in the restaurant. Yeah. They're going to contribute in their communities. They're going to help out a senior citizen, an elderly neighbor. They're going to get engaged in service, creating a family identity. This is what we do. We are a family that cares for other people. And we care about our community, and we're engaged in the world. Like from an early age, that's what we do. Encouraging your kids to ask questions and to listen. These are important parts of caring. So I think there's I could kind of go on and on. A lot of caring is practice too, chores. It's just getting into the regular routine of pitching in. There are a lot of things parents can do to prioritize caring for other people.
Absolutely. I love that you started with, you just need to go back home and ask. Because it's actually just that simple, that you need to have conversation, you need to communicate, at least to start bridging that gap.
Yeah.
And another really important thing that you said, which I wanted to highlight, was the idea of creating a familial identity. Because kids don't exist by themselves. They exist together in a family. And they really draw a lot of their own self through that family environment. So again, that's such a crucial piece of understanding what makes children good citizens.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And kids are responsive to what their parents do and what their parents are modeling, of course. That's a big way, kids. And when parents are modeling ethical behavior and caring for other people, that matters. They're sensitive to what their older siblings are doing. So if it becomes a family identity, it can be positively reinforcing in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. What, according to you, are some of the most important tools to help children develop resilience? Because that's also one part of the conversations that you have to make them more resilient in the environment that they grow up in. Yeah. And as we're seeing, the environment is almost becoming more and more difficult to fuel resilience. It's more and more difficult to stay detached from what's going around or what's going on the outside.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And resilience it's such a broad topic, because there's resilience in relation to what? And there's so many different kinds of adversities. Right. And I think kids need different strategies for dealing with different kinds of adversities. But just to take the current moment we're in, and so, not infrequently people will ask me, how do I talk to my kids about climate change? How do I talk to my kids about threats to democracy? And things that are scary. And There are a few things that I think are really important. One is, the most important protective factor for kids, particularly young kids, is a really secure relationship with a parent, and developing that relationship, listening, asking questions, not being too didactic, not preaching too much, but really being available, and being warm, affectionate. Those things are, some ways are straightforward. They can be hard when we're stressed and depressed ourselves.
Correct.
But those things are the anchor, I think. Helping your kids make meaning. Aaron Antonovsky says that we have to make trauma, but it's true for any kind of stress, manageable, meaningful, and comprehensible. And so, I think it's important when something bad happens in the world that you're able to talk to your kid about it in a way that makes it manageable. Like, here's some things you can do that makes it comprehensible. Here's why it happened and why we can try to avoid it happening in the future, or there are people who can try and avoid it happening in the future. And the third part is, I think kids don't want to be passive often. They want to feel like they can be part of the solution. So, if it's something like climate change, volunteering for an environmental organization, or writing your congressperson, or doing things around the house to recycle, whatever it is, doing, a fair at school, around environmental friendliness. That when kids are active, when they feel like they are doing something that has impact about things they're concerned about, it's good for the world, and it's good for their development, and it's good for their emotional health.
Yeah. What I hear from what you're saying is to kind of give back, or put back that old school way of keeping our kids safe and protected by not having difficult conversations. We're almost trying to challenge that and say that, no, it's important to have difficult conversations so that they know what's going on.
Yeah, I appreciate your point. I mean, that is one of the things I'm saying. I do think we need to be developmentally sensitive.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be overwhelming young kids with too much information. We shouldn't be doing too much sharing of our own anxieties.
Right.
That, I think, depends on who our kids are and how they will respond to our anxieties. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. I think that we should always, though, be responsive. That, if kids are hearing things and they ask us questions, we should do our best to answer their questions in a developmentally appropriate way. We shouldn't dodge hard questions because it's on their mind and they're trying to make sense of something.
Absolutely. In your book, The Way Parents Mean to Be, you speak a lot about intentioned parenting.
Yeah.
What do you really want to kind of convey through just that terminology? What should a parent who's perhaps listening to this take back from what you're trying to speak through in the book?
Well, I think the great majority of parents are deeply invested in their kids, love their kids. And there's a lot of wonderful parenting going on. There's some really great trends in parenting. Parents want to be closer to their kids, which can have its problems, but can also be just a wonderful thing for a lot of kids and for parents too. These parent communities are also more psychologically aware than other parents in the past. So some very good things about parenting. What I worry about is, I do worry about parents who are too focused on achievement. I worry about parents who are too focused on well-being, who are swooping in to resolve every conflict, trying to shield their kid from any adversity, all well-intentioned, but depriving them of the coping strategies that are going to be so important for their long-term well-being. So the irony is that the things that many parents are doing in the name of protecting their kids' moment-to-moment happiness are robbing them of those coping strategies that are going to be very important for long-term well-being. So I worry about that. So again, well-intentioned, but the consequence is not good. I'm concerned also about, and again, this is more middle and upper class white communities, I think, but the amount of attention we pay to kids' feelings sometimes. That must make you frustrated. That must make you sad. That must make you angry. I hear this on the playground a lot. It's very important to get kids to identify and articulate their feelings. It's especially important to get boys to identify and articulate their feelings. But when we do this too much, I worry it causes kids to make their inner life too important, and causes them to make their inner life theater. And they can become too preoccupied with their inner life. So again, something we're doing that's well-intentioned that may be undermining their happiness. And if we help them focus on other kids' feelings more, rather than focusing so much on their feelings, and if we were focused on other kids' feelings, if we develop our kids' capacity to tune into and empathize with other people, they're going to have better relationships their whole lives. They're going to be better parents, they're going to be better friends, mentors, romantic partners. And those are the most important sources of happiness that we have. Yeah. So the extent we can help our kids be empathic and develop good relationships, we're really creating a foundation for them, not only for a more moral life, but for a happier life.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because anyway, we're seeing this surge in AI, and for especially kids who are going to grow up in a world which is around AI. Yeah. Cognitive intelligence is not going to be weighed as high as it was weighed when, say, for example, when I was a child or you were a child. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's not that you can't do something better than the computer, because the computer can do it better than you. But what differentiates a human from that computer? And I think it's that ability to connect with another human being, because that's what we're also looking for a lot of the times. We want that connection with someone. It doesn't matter if they're answering a phone call. It doesn't matter if they're like a psychotherapist that we're going to. It doesn't matter if it's a doctor. It doesn't matter if it's just like a marketing person on the other line. We want to be understood and heard by them.
Yeah, understood and seen, yes. And I think we want to understand and see too, this is the problem when we talk about, there are all these new attempts to get, for a while there was, I can't remember what corporation it was, but it was building like dolls, robots for kids that had AI and could collect information about who they were and become their best friend by just repeating what they. And there's work being done with senior citizens who are lonely, where you also have your computer friend and that's not a relationship. Yeah. And AI may come to see and know you, but the beauty is in the mutuality, right? Often it's in the being known. It's in the being able to know and see, not just being able to be known and seen, and to be in a relationship of mutual care.
Absolutely. You spoke on this a little bit, but I wanted to take a deeper dive into this. When we think about parenting, and like what you were saying, that a lot of well-intentioned parenting is the one that can be detrimental or can have a flip side to it, which we might not see. Yeah. How do you identify if you're being an overprotective parent or a highly well-intentioned parent where it might not be required? And then what tools would you say are optimum, or what tools you say are important for parents to use now? Yeah.
Well, let me say two things that I think are important to pay attention to. One is, I think parents need to. I was an anxious parent. I'm an anxious grandparent. I'm still a parent, anxious parent, and grandparent still. And one of the things is being able to observe and manage your own anxiety, because sometimes I think when we're overprotective and helicoptering and hovering, it is really born out of our anxiety and not based on some real threat out there. And to be able to say to yourself as a parent, this is an anxious day for me, and I've got to be careful not to let that anxiety drive the way I'm interacting with my child in a way that may be too protective or too helicoptering or too hovering. I also think as parents, we need feedback from other people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there are other countries where feedback is pretty routine. The parents give each other feedback. But in the US, we have this idea that, parenting should be solo. And, we also have the idea in the US that if we're going to do anything at a high level, if we're going to build a rocket, we need teams. We need people who give each other feedback. But around maybe the most important thing we do, we've insulated ourselves from feedback of any kind. And, I asked a very close friend, and this is what I suggest to parents when my kids were young: if I ever do something that you think is harmful to my kid, please tell me. Or if you think I'm being too anxious or helicoptery or lawnmowery or whatever, there's all these new names. And this friend gave me some feedback, and it was hard feedback, and he's not my friend anymore. I'm just kidding. He's still my friend. And I really I was stung by it, but I really appreciate it. So I think we've got to be brave enough to ask for feedback from our partner, our spouse, or very close friends, or somebody.
Yeah. Another thing that I saw that you were working on was intergenerational relationships. How older people, more like kind of grandparent figures, influence younger children, and how younger children can also influence older adults.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more towards that effect? Because I come from a country where it's the norm that grandparents also take part in the parenting process of a child. The child interacts with their grandparents.
Yeah.
But now we're moving towards a kind of change in the social fabric of our country as well.
Yeah.
More nuclear families, more time away from grandparents.
Yeah.
So what insights have you seen? Because this has already happened in the US. They've moved away. Their social fabric has changed a lot.
Yeah. That's a good question. So I'm not directly involved in a lot of this work. I'm a big fan of an organization called Cogenerate. It used to be called Encore, then it was called Primetime, but it's getting seniors involved in service. Cogenerate is getting seniors and young adults involved in service together, solving common problems, and sort of bringing together the wisdom of seniors with the more contemporary wisdom of young adults, more contemporary in the sense of more tuned into technology, more tuned into modern currents among young people. And I think it's a wonderful program. I think this is a great thing to do. I think it's generative for older people. It can be energizing, exciting for older people. It can be exciting for younger people too. I think they have different kinds of wisdom to bring that can be very important. So I think this is the kind of thing we should be doing more of. We should be trying some of this has gone on in Boston in the past. We should be trying to get grandparents to be volunteering in schools, for example, reading to kids. There's just lots of ways that grandparents have time, want to be involved in kids' lives and young adults' lives, and still have an enormous amount to give. So I think we should be doing those things. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the benefits that come out of this interaction? I mean, in terms of what comes out for the grandparents, it gives them something to look forward to. It gives them purpose. It helps them kind of bring back the sense of nurturing a child again. But what does the child get out of it that's different from what the parents could give?
Yeah, so I think from the grandparents' perspective, in addition to the things that you identified, this is a generation that is much more psychological. It's a generation that may finally break the stigma about mental health in this country, the younger generation. Okay. So I think that's something that senior citizens can learn from. It's a generation that's thought a lot about race and racism and classism and sexism and gender identity. And I think those are things that grandparents can learn from. But, I believe in experience too. I mean, I'm 67, so I'm officially a senior citizen. I can get discounts at movies. I think that, there are a lot of senior citizens who have started nonprofits, started businesses, know how to get things done, have a lot of experience with how collaborations and partnerships work, who have a lot of life experience and life wisdom. I do think experience matters. I mean, one of the things that I feel like, happens as you get older is you can see patterns, that you can see very quickly much more quickly how things will unfold when you endeavor on something, or when you meet people. You become better at reading people over time. You have more information. Yeah. I think that seniors also have been through a lot of history. So, one of the things I think about right now is a lot of people are feeling very dark about the world. I lived through the Vietnam War, which was, like feeling very dystopic too, like the world's disintegrating. And, during the Vietnam War, we felt like, I was young, but there was a feeling like of disintegration, that the country was coming apart. Polarization was really bad, really deep. There were these assassinations, and it felt like people were getting killed, and we couldn't protect our political leaders and our moral leaders, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, JFK. Malcolm X, all shot and killed. But we got through it, and I think there are lessons about hope that are very important for young people to hear. People who started the civil rights movement, the odds against the civil rights movement, the odds against the gay rights movement, the odds against the women's movement at the time seemed really daunting.
Correct.
And these are people, we still have a lot of work to do in these areas, but we made, those movements made an enormous project because people were willing to believe and to persevere. And so anyway, I think they're messages of hope that are very important for us. I think we have a moral responsibility to convey hope to younger generations.
Yeah, because that kind of history is so rich and it can't be replicated, it can't be taught.
Yeah.
Because it's a lived experience and it can only be communicated. It's like stories being passed on. They just have to be communicated.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And my experience is young people want to hear, my students, they want to hear the stories.
Yeah.
They're very interested.
I couldn't agree more. I used to love listening to stories about what has happened, what the world used to look like, what hardships used to look like, for sure. As a final piece of advice, what would you like to tell, maybe 3 or 5 things that you would like to tell modern parents today? Something modern, urban parents who are just new to the field of parenting, who don't know what to do, just based on all of your research.
Well, some of it's my research, some of it's sort of other people's research. But, one thing I think I want modern parents to do is rather than telling their kids the most important thing is that you're happy, tell them the most important thing is that you're kind. Or the most important thing is that you're kind and you're happy. I really would like modern parents to, as I said, to hold their kids to high ethical expectations. I want modern parents to really do some rigorous self-reflection, self-observance about this achievement stuff and try and disentangle how much is this about my concerns and how much of this is about my child.
Yeah.
I think the real art of parenting often is understanding the ways your child is different from you and getting behind the ways your child is different and not expecting your child to live out your agendas or your fantasies, but really helping them realize their agendas and their fantasies. So, that's something I feel like is really important to convey to parents. I think that, Jerome Kagan, who was in the psychology department here, used to say, it's less in the notes than the melody. And what he meant by that is that, when I was a parent, I made mistakes. I beat myself up when I made mistakes. We all are going to make mistakes. His point was sometimes the notes are wrong. But if you get the melody right, if you create an environment which is open and loving, and also where there are real guardrails, where there is, you're able to discipline appropriately. It's called authoritative parenting, where you can listen, but you also know when to discipline and create boundaries. That's the melody we want. And if we get the melody right, I really hope parents don't beat themselves up too much about the notes.
Yeah. Those were such profound insights. And I'm so sure that everybody who's listening to this is going to benefit so much from it, because sometimes you need to hear it to reaffirm what you perhaps already know, but don't really act on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for staying tuned for this podcast. It was an extremely insightful conversation, even for me as just the listener who was asking him questions. Stay tuned for more.